This is Listening with Franklin Livingston, and our guest is Tricia McMann.
No, sometimes a little push,
Mm-hmm.
a little encouragement, or just an act you might think is, I didn't do much.
Right.
Because a lot of us don't give enough credit to ourselves, and then some people give so much credit.
Yeah.
So, um, I have shared this before. Growing up in Pakistan, our house got burned down.
Hmm.
And the first family in the neighborhood that took us in was a Muslim family, right? And the first monetary help to some clothes and stuff was given by one of our sister's teacher, who was a very practicing Muslim woman. You know, those who would cover her head and pray all the time type. And after that was a Catholic church convent, because our mother used to teach in a Catholic convent, although we were not Catholics. So that's something would always remain with me. I might not remember because there was a lot of hate and discrimination, especially after 9/11. Things were very different. There was a tension between Muslim and non-Muslims in general around the world. Um, that was one of the after effects of the war on terror in Afghanistan and how it affects the other country or has affected.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the Muslim countries became extremely Muslim after that,
Mm-hmm.
and things changed. So living in an Islamic country wasn't really easy. But my focus or my memories always go back to those people who were Muslim, but who were nice and viewed us as just humans, as their community members,
Right.
instead of different and someone who's going to go to hell and some people who shouldn't have the same rights as us.
Right. Right. Yeah. I that after that from 9/11, it just you had if a Muslim was living here and they had their community and it was like a switch, next thing you know, you're the bad guy. And I can't even imagine going anywhere. Never mind getting on, say you did this flight every day for business purposes. September 12th was a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
Of doing what you had done for the last 30, 40 years living in the United States. So, but it's like a light switch sometimes, depending on what event took place.
And I think that was a time uh, I wasn't in New York City, so I don't know what happened, but I know I've heard some painful stories. That was a time again where someone's faith might have been tested.
Mm-hmm.
Are you living according to your values and belief system, or are you living according to your fake identity? I'm calling it a fake identity because if you say I'm Christian or Catholic or Baptist or whoever,
Right.
but have no clue what the religion teaches you, then there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would say even maybe using God's name in vain. And that happens across the monotheistic religions.
Mm-hmm.
It's not only Christianity where it happens, in Islam that happens. Uh, and in Hinduism, I don't have a lot of knowledge of Hinduism, but I've seen enough movies and stuff. I'm family friends with one family in New Jersey because they own a restaurant in New York City. So I've seen their home has a temple and mini temples.
Yeah.
I haven't seen them doing worship there, but I've seen that worship in the TV. But all these religions have really raised a lot of extremists, and that's what we are facing till today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem too. Is if you get too embedded into some belief, um, and that belief starts turning into a, it's them against us type mentality, is where the chaos begins, and the crime and destruction, and we got to beat them, and as opposed to coming together, which is unfortunate. And it happens I often now. Often. I mean,
Yeah.
we live in such a divided world. Um, and even with my close friends, there's a lot of things that they don't believe in the same things that I believe in, and some of the things I wouldn't believe also. But
If you
again,
have some sort of understanding to respect each other,
right,
right?
right,
And still love and care for each other.
absolutely. They've never done anything to harm me, hurt me, hurt my family, disrespect. So it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay if you think that way. It doesn't affect me. But a lot of people don't look at it that way.
They don't, and I'm surprised because I say, even if you look at a household structure, if you have three kids, one of them might like asparagus, the other one might say, I hate it. I don't like the taste. I don't like the texture.
Yeah.
And when they grow older, one of them might turn out to be a pescatarian, the other might be vegan, the third one might be a vegetarian, the fourth might be like, okay, I'm gonna only survive on pizza and hamburgers.
Yeah.
But do you disown them? Do you say, no, because of your eating habits or eating choices, I disown you and I say, you are not my children anymore?
Right.
And that's what's happening.
Right. And
If
people
that's
do
the
that.
belief system, because you can speak to this more than me, but a vegan has a certain understanding and they have a belief system, and so as pescatarians,
Right.
and so as vegetarians. And that belief system drives their desire to eat certain foods and abstain from certain foods.
Right. Right. Um, in It's not like, so as a vegan, and I have a friend that's a heavy meat eater, do I not go out to dinner with them?
All right.
Absolutely not. I would go out to dinner. Am I going to share anything on their plate? No. But that's okay. It works for me, and if somebody is interested in, by looking on the outside, saying, well, that seems to be working for her, I'd like to learn more. That's great. I'll be there. I'll tell you everything you need to know. But it goes back, just the expectations of people that, well, you're not like me, or even flipping around. If a meat eater said, I'm not going to go out to dinner with her because she's not going to share a steak with me. Does that, that's can't be right, and it happens with not just dietary, it's with, choices of sexual orientation and in religion, like we talked about. It's just, we need a variety. A variety is what makes this world tick. It's not saying one is better than the other. Would I like
something funny that sometimes it comes to my mind? If the creator, if God wanted everyone to be white, everyone to be Christian, everyone to be of a particular, whatever you want to add, sexual orientation or language or whatever, then he would have made that way, or he would have let that happen, right?
Right.
But if someone else is in control, and if we believe, a lot of people might not use this term God, they might not hold on to a traditional religious belief system, but they would still say, I believe in a higher power or cosmos or universe. And if the diversity, if that variation is part of that creation, who are we to say, nah, it should be like me?
Right. Right.
And I think that's what a lot of people get stuck with. And then
Right.
they form groups, and
Right.
groups become organizations.
Right.
And then we see the devastation in the world.
Exactly. And I believe it's triggered a lot by fear. You know, somebody that is not afraid, isn't going to go out of their way to try to get followers or become a stronger army, if you wish, you know, because they're okay with what their environment is, their community. So it is a lot of fear driven actions that form these groups that and just get more people, and a lot of it is anger. You know, if somebody gets angry enough at a different group, you know, what's the end result there? It's to overpower it. It's to break it down, to make it go away. So I think that triggers a lot of these actions that take place now in the world.
Speaking of fear and anger,
Mhm.
I know you have watched the movie,
Yes.
and
Yes.
want to talk to us about the.
So you're referring to abrogation.
Yes.
Okay. So what is the meaning behind that? Because I did look it up, and it said something along the lines of annulling or appealing. And I was trying to figure out how, at what part.
So annulling a law, right? So this is particularly toward a religious law, if you see in ancient context, then, or appealing, or in our modern day language, I think we are creating an idea that you should question, or we are questioning as viewers, as somebody involved in the story of an old tradition or law, if you will, uh, which prohibits people from accepting, if you say have done something that your law or that system does not recognize as something you can come back after. Divorce as an example. So if you go through a divorce in a lot of Christian traditions, you are not supposed to come back to that church because now you belong to a group of sinners or whatever extreme version is,
Right.
and which in itself is a law made by a group of leaders in that church. Because if Christianity is all about forgiveness and grace and love and acceptance, and the verse they use, Jesus talking about that, they don't see the whole context of Jesus' teaching, and they just become too fundamentalist about that, and they would say, "Oh yeah, this is not something that happens." And you've seen the movie, so again,
Right.
you said, why do a lot of people do things or live by certain rules? Because they are afraid. It's a fear based. So I let you speak to that. Like, what was your take on the movie?
I think, you know, the family, they had fear. They didn't want to change what they were used to. And so with the gentleman of color coming into their environment, they didn't know how to handle it. They didn't know what to do, what changes were going to take place. And so that's where that fear comes in of the unknown, I guess, you know, as opposed to being excited of in variety and you know, sharing cultures. But, you know, and it was mostly the father. However, you know, the wife did come around, but at the same time, she was instilled with her fear of going against her husband. Eventually, she realized, you know, that you have to have your own beliefs, and you know, her daughter was more important to her well-being. So it really focused on a lot of, I think, common family environments and the makeup of what happens within homes, that when you grow up and you know it one way, you don't necessarily want to have it a different way. And that's what's unfortunate. But again, that goes back to the fear of unknown.
So, say the family was religious, everything was the same, but the guy wasn't a person of color. Things
Mhm.
might have been different, or the fear of an unknown, or fear of having someone who doesn't share the same values and beliefs
Yeah.
might have been there.
Yeah, I don't necessarily I believe it was all about the color. It was just the not sharing the same belief because they had already made the assumption anyway of what his religious background
Mhm.
was, and they were wrong.
Mhm.
And so that's another factor that comes into play. People, let's judge that book by its cover, and which they did. So I don't. I think again, it's just the people are so strong on their beliefs that they don't know what to do, or they're afraid to have other beliefs because they don't know if it's going to work or if it's going to change who they are.
Mhm.
But that was a huge factor in the movie, which was wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I personally think it's very relevant, especially now the United States has become more multicultural.
Hmm.
And it also reminds me of a narrative one of our guests shared here. She grew up in a small town, Alaska. And I don't remember it was a small town of Alaska or not small town, but it was a town of Alaska which was very Christian. And according to her, a Hindu family moved there, and the people of that neighborhood drove them out, assuming they were Muslims because their skin color was brown,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I think that's why we went in that direction to share this idea that skin color or skin tone does not reflect your religion or religious background. But I still think it's a new idea. Although I was thinking, well, everyone has an access to social media, they know it probably by now.
Right.
But in my actually driveway, so I just bumped into an African American school teacher. She teaches in I'm trying to understand either in Port Chester or somewhere nearby. And she said she met another African American whom she shared with that, oh, I'm a Roman Catholic. And she said, I never heard of a black Roman Catholic. And I was listening to her and thinking, okay, what does that have to do with race?
Right.
Maybe because East Coast people think, oh, Italians are Catholic. I don't know, right? Because sometimes the history, for example, there are parts of the Midwest where there are a lot of Germans, and right away you think, oh, a German Lutheran. Why? Because of Martin Luther.
Yeah.
But things have changed. We talk about centuries ago,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And but a lot of us still maybe tie your skin color or your tone, skin tone with your religious identity or background. So that's why we try to address that, making it more like in a fun way that a bunch of people are fighting over something that's not even true, but none of them did that investigation,
Right.
research,
Right.
or they have no clue. They are clueless that things can be the other way.
Right. Right. I mean, they didn't look at it like, all right, well, here's this great guy, compared to her, previous relationship, which probably fit their mold of who would be a perfect spouse
Mhm.
for her.
Mhm.
But turned out to be a bad guy.
Mhm.
And, rather than here's this real nice, respectful person coming into her life, and that's not even the first thing that they pick up on. It was the color, it was his religious background. It just, yeah.
Which is so interesting. I don't know. We'll get into your relationships later, but these days, most of the apps or the way we go on, what do we call speed dating. I went to one in Brooklyn, right? And so it's based on your appearance.
Yes.
You go on an app, say, and you're like,
Yeah.
and you don't care about
Right.
you don't. They haven't provided you with something more deep.
Right.
It's so shallow that okay. And what if you got your pictures done in a great light? Like, and this is our profession, so we understand light, camera, angle.
Right.
Or there are days you look puffy, and there are days you don't look puffy, and your best picture is all that you need. And then some people say with some props. Props, I'm saying, for example, even if you don't have a puppy, get a picture with a puppy. So puppy ends up becoming a prop,
Right.
right? And there's nothing about your life discipline, your choices, your habits, and how you treat others. And when you go to the speed dating, so there are events. I went with one of my best friends, and we pretended we don't know each other.
Right.
She's a female, so
Yeah.
male, and we wanted to try it because we were bored and wasn't anything happening. And I forgot a couple of years ago, and went to Williamsburg. So there were probably 40 people, a lot of people, and somebody will ring a bell, and you go and talk to the other person for 2 or 3 minutes. Now, and through when we started with the elevator speech, it's like an elevator speech rushed, but it's awkward, it's weird, because I'm not selling their soaps and shampoos or
Right.
something that, hey, look at me, I'm gonna really make your shampoo, hair grow
Yeah.
smoother and long and silky. And I thought that was wasted of money. I mean, it's great to just see how that happens because they charge like, I think they charge around 60 or $65 per person. I
Oh,
guess.
wow.
So that was great.
You at least
So
get a meal out of it?
no,
No.
that
Oh,
wasn't included. I think
okay.
it was really costly, if I remember. And you had to buy 2 drinks because it was at a bar.
Yep.
And but I don't know. I don't think that's the because again, here's the thing: we live in a world that's highly glamorized,
Hmm.
and that's what we see on social media and TV. So if someone looks extremely glamorized, most likely that's the person who can get other people's attention. And you are blinded by the fact you're looking at a superficial side of a person. You'd have no clue who that person is.
Hmm.
But that's the world we live in.
Right. It's fast moving, I think.
Yes, fast moving and fast moving over and fast
Yeah.
moving, getting over and fast breakups and
Yeah.
instant hookups and that stuff. So how was it back then when you were growing up?
Well, of course, we didn't have social media, but I think you took time to know the part of that person besides the first their appearance, the first thing you see.
How did you do that? Like when I say you, your
Yeah.
siblings, your friends, your group in that age range.
Yeah, I mean, well, we would have a lot of parties, and you would go to them, and but we would still stick in that same kind of social circle too. That was at these parties, but you got to know a person, and then you'd go on a date, and if you liked the person, you'd do another date, and it was nice.
Were there more boundaries than these days? Whatever
I
boundaries
don't know.
meant.
To me personally, it felt a lot safer back then. And maybe it was because you kind of stayed in your social circle, where now, you have no idea if that person is in, Wisconsin, that is saying that they're in your backyard, so, that it's just, I think the strangeness of meeting somebody now versus back then, where it was kind of like you really did know more than going into it. You knew more about that person to begin with. You either went to high school with them or it was a family friend, and so you knew they weren't crazy, and
Hmm.
or had a criminal background, because you would know that too. um but yeah, like now I just think it's so fast, and people don't want to take the time and energy into really finding out what a person is about. And that's unfortunate because I think that's where a lot of issues come into play. That you meet somebody online, next thing you know, you're moving in together.
Mm.
Next thing you know, it turns out, the person was a convict and now they're holding you hostage, so it's just, to me, it's a little scarier now.
It is, and I think so. Nowadays, I try to assess if I chat with someone, and most of the time, and I'm saying most of the time, when somebody asks, "Oh, what's your idea of a first date?" and then I'm gonna say, "A leisurely walk, coffee, just like keeping it really low key,"
Yeah.
and they wouldn't reply. But 1%, if I ask them, "What was your idea?" they would talk about a fancy dinner or something that I know because I have been in that situation where I went out and I was to buy a dinner, which I did, but the check turned out to be $800.
Oh,
And I was still a student. This was in Manhattan, right?
wow.
So some people, and then you will not see them again,
Yeah.
right? And another instance where I was wiser and went out and all that, and somebody was asking me to buy them a leather jacket or something. Oh, it's gonna be cold, and then I'll feel more comfortable and safe going back to Brooklyn. So, so there are a lot of things, and I think there is a power to knowing them,
Hmm.
and because they also know they are accountable to the community. You also know you're accountable to the community. You got the back of your family, your friends, or community.
Right.
But if you live in this orderless world where there's no, going back to the same structure, where there's no sense of accountability,
Right.
and you think no one's watching me. I am living in New York City, but my family in Minnesota is not going to know that.
Right.
And who cares? Because also, like, I'm not accountable to a higher power. I don't believe in any religion, so no one is gonna judge me. And they would. I have heard this talk, like, if somebody's sharing with their friends, and they'll say, "I'm gonna tell you something really funny. There was this really stupid guy. I don't want you to judge me."
Yeah.
Because it's not my fault, because he is stupid and he is desperate,
Yeah.
and he just don't know better, and he's just throwing himself out there. So that's the kind of culture is not going to be healthy in the long run.
Right.
Because if you are a sane, normal human being, and back in the day, actually, I was interested in law school, and I learned this word sane, like such and such of a sane. I forgot how they draft, but legal vocabulary is very funny. I know your dad was a lawyer, and
Yeah.
sane. I have used that a few times here, and I don't know. People might think I'm crazy, but if someone is sane, they have true human emotions. I think there will be a time in their life it will kick in,
Hmm.
and then sometimes it's too late, and a lot of people struggle when they get into their 30s and 40s and 50s, and then, like, oh my god, I don't know, but
Hmm.
they can't tell why, because I think human emotions feed into your physiological being.
Hmm.
Sometimes we don't know what's happening. I didn't do anything wrong in my life,
Yeah.
but and different traditions, like I think more Eastern tradition might call it karma. uh, Psychotherapy or therapists might call it something else, regret or whatever,
Right.
and baggage, right?
Yeah.
So healthy choices, I think, even in a diet, like we talked about it, you know, I know when I have eaten a lot of meat or hamburgers, and next day when I wake up, it's so totally different than
Yeah.
if I had a very light
Yeah.
dinner, right? So our body tells, our other functions tell what has happened to us.
Right.
We might not have a great sense of discernment or understanding about different things. So, but I think it does.
Yeah, definitely. I know. I love the definition of sane now. I don't think you could. It's probably blank in the dictionary
Mm-hmm.
because there's so many ways to look at
Mm-hmm.
sanity. But yeah. I mean, I think too people they don't want to be, and I'm not sure complacent is the right word, but people now are just they're not satisfied with maybe a few bumps in the road. You meet somebody and they're not perfect because nobody's perfect, but that one little flaw, although it's not a huge flaw, we know what the big ones are, you know, changes the dynamics of the relationship. And then, oh, I can't be in this relationship
Mm.
because of this one flaw versus, all the wonderful other aspects of a person. And I think there's too much of that now too. The
Yeah.
expectations of perfection, and that's again, social media does that too because they make these relationships online look like, oh wow, they're so in love and they're traveling here and
Right.
they're going out to dinner there, and that's what I want. And
They
it
only
does
show the
it doesn't
positive side.
yeah, it
Because
doesn't
if they show the
exist.
weaker moments, no one's gonna follow them.
Right.
But that's where true relationship is.
Right.
And I think if you pick any religious, and it doesn't matter what religion, global, I'm talking about religions, uh, these vows
Mm-hmm.
to health and sickness and
Yeah.
richness and poor, or wealth or poverty. But a lot of us, when we lose money, we lose our spouse,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And I still remember I had a trainer uh, in the city who used to train a lot of Broadway actors and wealthy people. And we used to get along well, and he would share different stories. And he once said that in his experience, whenever, and his mostly clients were women, and whenever a woman gets in a great shape, she leaves her spouse.
Hmm.
And I was surprised, and I was like, why? And in his understanding or experience, it was now she has more options. So she can get a better person. But again, who was a better person?
Right.
And the better person was, oh, better like someone who has a better jawline or who has a better abs, right?
Right.
So is it a real life? But that's a lot of, because a lot of people who are materialistically doing great,
Mm-hmm.
then they don't really think of losing support that they might need in sickness or in poverty,
Mm-hmm.
because they don't think that way.
Right.
I still remember a gentleman, family friends with. He might be, maybe he's 70 now, and his he and his wife were going through some. They were considering getting separated, and I heard them. She talking, and she said to him, "So what's going to happen if you grow old and sick, and who's going to cut your nails?" I think that's what the conversation was. It's been a long time ago.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh yeah, there are a lot of people. I'll just pay anyone, and they'll do it."
Yeah.
So see, that's the thing where you don't think, what if
Right.
I don't have money?
Right.
And your trust is more in Uncle Sam
Mm.
than other things, right? Because you have that.
Right. And you can figure it out from there.
Yeah.
If it happens.
But I think a spousal relationship, I don't know if there's a word spousal, or I just made it up. But in a matrimonial relationship,
Yeah.
you both are to be there for each other through thick and thin.
Right.
Mostly thin.
Yeah.
Because thin is when your friends might leave you, your community might leave you because you don't have anything to offer.
Right.
But that one person who loves you,
Yeah. Unconditionally.
unconditionally.
Yeah.
uh, traditionally
Yeah.
unconditionally.
Yeah.
These days, like, oh my God,
Yeah.
you sold your New York City apartment. Okay, maybe I need to find a new one now, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, did you date during your high school or college? Back to you. When did it all
Oh
start?
boy. Well, I had a serious boyfriend in high school, and he was a bit older. And so when he graduated, I was still in high school, and it was unfortunate because I had missed out on, really doing the things with, my peers in high school and attending events.
Because you would spend more time
I
with him?
was right. I
Oh,
spent
oh.
so much time with him that I didn't have those. I had a group of girlfriends, and but I just felt like I could have been more um, there, a part of it, if I had not been dating this
But
guy.
did you think that was the right thing to do then? Giving your spouse,
Yeah.
boyfriend, more time than your friends?
No, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say because I still think you're so young at that age, and to have a serious boyfriend to me doesn't make a lot of sense. Knowing I'm standing where I am now and the things that I have seen through my years. Um, but I get why there are high school relationships, and some people end up marrying that high school partner, and they celebrate 70 years of wedding bliss. But I think the vast majority of it is that that person who you are then isn't going to be the person that you are in your 20s and 30s when it really matters, where you have responsibilities and you have to step up to the plate. So, I did, once I broke up, I was dating a few other people in college, and, I had fun, and I got to see the people that I would not go out on a second date with, and some that, I fell madly in love with that, ended up breaking my heart. So, it's a little bit of everything, and you kind of carry that with you through life, the good times, the
Yeah.
heartbreak, so it's all, I think it's kind of made me obviously into who I am now and my expectations of my relationship. I've been married now for 23 years, but I knew him as a friend previously for about 10 years.
Cool.
Yeah, so I wasn't going into anything that.
You didn't know.
Yeah,
The guy from Wisconsin.
yeah, yeah, that weird guy from Wisconsin. So, um, so there's something to be said with that. But I mean, there's times where I will, you know, resort back to something that maybe back in my past relationship happened that it'll take place now currently, in my relationship with my husband. And that's unfortunate, but I think we carry as with the baggage. And I have different baggage than he does, and sometimes it comes into play when we're in a particular environment. And sometimes the end result isn't ideal, but it happens, and you need to have that person that can understand that it's not anything they're particularly doing. It's the whatever you have felt in the past, the pain, the letdown, or the good times. Maybe there's too much expectation, like this guy would do this and you're not doing it. So I think, but after years and years, you kind of understand what what works and what makes you happy, and things that don't make you happy. And if it outweighs what makes you happy, then maybe it is time to move on. But you give it your best shot, and But I just there is something to be said with that security of having somebody you've known for a long period of time
Yeah.
that knows everything about you, sometimes even more than you know about
Mm.
yourself. And there's something to be said with that. Whereas I think now it's people are too quick to find that one thing
Yeah.
that
Mm.
annoys them, and they say, "I'm out."
Mm.
So
Actually, it's very interesting you say that. Um, because I think in that kind of relationship where I was finding a word which means unstoppable. You are in unstoppable sharing
mhm,
space and thoughts, and there's a very little of privacy.
mhm,
So there's a constant learning because everything we experience somehow affects us.
yeah,
Even you're here today and tomorrow or tonight when you go home, uh, you might be slightly different because there might be triggers that might make you happy or sad or
mhm,
something. And with the spouse or that kind of relationship, if there is no daily check in, there might be a problem. The reason I'm saying that because I've seen some couples don't have time and they would go home, both are extremely tired. They'll do that ritual of kiss. Okay, honey, good night. Okay, babe, good
right,
night. And to me, that's okay, that's it. Because I don't know, maybe I'm too analytical, but I've seen that. And then they would wait for their monthly therapist's appointment, and which personally I hate sometimes. You go to a therapist after a month, and you get really excited and you're talking, and she mostly like these females went to. No, there was a guy too in Manhattan, but they'll say, "Oh, okay, your 15 minutes are up,"
right,
and you're like, "Oh," but you can't say that in front of her or him. And but if you have friends or if you have people who are really close to you, which happens, you probably know, which happens a little different in women's case as men don't really open up. We can go out to drink beer, watch a game,
right,
and do activities, but we'll talk about politics and game, and if it's more acting world and all that, but we would rarely share about the deep down what's happening there. I
right,
don't know why, but I think in my research, personal understanding, it takes 3 years for two men to become a bit vulnerable. Not like fully, a bit.
wow,
And women, usually, when I would go to conferences and all that, and say, like, I went with my colleague, right? And when a session resumes, and I was like, okay, where is she? I don't see her. And next thing you'll see her walking out of a bathroom and holding her makeup bag. And then she'll say, oh, I made just two more friends. And they won't even say made. They would say, okay, this is my friend Tricia,
yeah,
and this is my friend Maggie.
yeah,
And it's different. I think it's great.
yeah, yeah,
And I wish men had that thing too, but maybe it's the culture that tells you just be strong. You can't really talk about your emotions,
yeah,
and you can just
absolutely.
fight through it, right? And it's hard for men having all those responsibilities and do a lot of things on their own and not being able to talk.
Right.
Uh,
Which is why there's a lower heart disease in women, because we do let it off of our
women live
chest.
longer too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think a lot of it is doing that. It's not bottling it up and waiting for that half an hour appointment where you can get it out, or not even have enough time to get it
Yeah,
out. But
I mean, you get warmed up.
you're like, I'm ready.
In half an hour is you're like just getting accustomed to the
Yeah.
environment because you have been there in a month,
Right.
and then after 20 minutes, it's like, okay, go
Yeah.
home. Oh, you're right. And then you're driving back or sitting in the subway thinking about all those things you wished you had shared with her,
Yeah.
which is so sad. Yeah.
Yeah.